So this conversation with Laurie Shears was so lovely, and it particularly struck a chord with me as the mother of a young girl who's very artistic, and how we can bring creativity into all these things to really make them the center of our relationship.
It was just so fun to have three women that are clearly devoted to having creative lives, talk about creativity and to kind of like meander all the ways that life can be a creative act, certainly a courageous act, as we were discussing it. There was a lot of little tips in this episode that I thought would be helpful if someone wants to increase their creativity, for sure.
Yeah, really beautiful practices. And there's a moment towards the end when you speak of courage. I love that you brought in the courageous act just now, because you spoke about the French translation of courage. And I'm not going to give it away. I want people to experience that for themselves. But it landed deep in the back of my heart.
Oh, that was beautiful. Well, thank you. Have a beautiful episode, you guys, watching it or hearing it, and more to come. All right. Good morning, everyone.
Hi. Good morning, everyone.
Welcome to this episode. I'm really excited to have Laurie. My dear friend Laurie is visiting us this week. And I was remembering where we met, Laurie, and in a writing workshop. And I remember when you had just spoken, I was like, I want this woman to be my friend. It was really one of those, like, I kind of fell in love with your way and your way of talking and your way of being. And it was really fun. And actually, as I was thinking about that, I was thinking, how do we fall in love with people? As in, how do we know? There was like 20 people in there? 25?
Well, it was mutual. I mean, it was 1,000% mutual. And I remember what you said. First of all, you came on screen and you have such a beautiful, enthusiastic presence. And you said something that I won't forget. And it's that you do something with your journals after you write them. Oh. You said you go through your journals and you highlight the things that were relevant to you. And then I'm not sure if you did this part or if I made this up, that you take those papers out and you make something new out of it.
I do. You know, when you go to class and you take notes and you're writing all this stuff and then you have a journal with notes. When I come out of a workshop, I will highlight the sentences I particularly liked, and then I will make art out of it. I tear it and I do a collage. Ooh. And we'll put pages in the middle.
What a lovely suggestion. That'd be a great little activity for people to do as a result of what we're talking about.
Exactly. And it's like, sometimes those notes are like, you just like, what is it for? But to give them life and to really give them meaning, and how do I want to illustrate? So it's perfect because, Laurie, that you remember that, because to me, when I think of you, funny enough, when I think of both of you, the word creativity like comes to mind so strongly, the way even you dress and the way you talk and the way you interact with people. So creativity is very much at the center of our friendship, which I'm really just cherish so much from both.
Lovely.
So, Laurie,
that's very evident in both of your backgrounds also.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Yes, your commitment to creativity and to, and to interacting with your environment. So I love hearing that, that whole a way to put an opening into action in your life.
Cool.
Yes. Thank you for that.
Yes.
When I first met you, Katie, I don't know if you're going to remember that. I think it may have been the very first time I came to your house. You took me to your closet and we had this beautiful conversation about how dressing and putting clothes on was such a creative act. And I remember falling in love with you right there too.
And that's still the case.
Yeah, exactly.
I love your colors, Katie. And I am inspired by the idea of having a closet where everything is an expression of my thing. I am less like that than I want to be. I really aspire to be like, I've told my husband many times, and he thinks I'm kidding, and I'm not, that when I get older, I want to be a sexy Mrs. Roper. Do you know from Three's Company? Do you know the reference? Okay, I will send you some pictures. She's hilarious. You know, Katie, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Just teensy.
Okay. I don't know if I have it right if Three's Company takes It's in LA. It's in LA. But she dresses like a Floridian retiree with a little sex appeal and kookiness. Like a lot of pattern and flair, and it's kind of she's funny and maybe not sexy necessarily to most of the viewing audience, but I feel like that's what I want to live into as I get older. Like she's eccentric. There's a lot of pattern, and she just doesn't care.
Yes, and I love it too that because I've heard references, lately, especially with the various political things that are going on, that they talk about little old ladies.
Oh.
And I thought, that's such a trope, the little old ladies. And so I think there are a whole bunch of us who are more in our elder years now who are busting up that particular mythology.
Oh, yes.
Old lady. It's like
there's a very creative book that my mom had, or I think maybe gave me many years ago, and it's called Succulent Wild Women.
Ooh.
It's what it sounds like. It's like
yes, very much.
Yes. And that, oh my gosh, what's her name? That artist who wrote that book, When I'm Old, I Shall Wear Purple.
Yes. Yes. That was what I was thinking of also. And I do wear purple.
I'm with you. I'm in that camp. I'm with you.
Purple and orange. So Laurie and I were having a conversation, Katie, as we often do, and we were talking about our zone of genius. And I was really interested in bringing it up a little bit in like, how do we actually live our lives there? How do we courageously make the move to really step into this? And I thought it would be, Laurie, if you're open to that, I would love for you to share with us a little bit where you're at with it, where you feel you're not at with it, and give us a little.
Yes, I feel vulnerable about it, but open. And like, just by way of background, like I made my career in advertising as a copywriter on the creative side, doing like concepting and writing. And I fell into it, and I found that I was really good at it. I'm a lifelong journal writer and a professional writer, but it sort of was like a thing that I did, and then I got rewarded for it, and then I stayed in it for a long time, and it was a zone of excellence.
Yep.
Sure. But I didn't love selling people things. That wasn't really what my passion has ever been. And so I've been kind of not on the lookout, but like my ears have been attuned to where I'm going next, really for the last 10 years, to be honest with you. And I've shifted into coaching, and I started by coaching creative people, and I love creative people. And more recently, I've really discovered or rediscovered how much the creative process is healing and illustrative and makes the intangible tangible. And I've fallen in love with this idea, I think, of bringing the creative process into my work and to anyone who needs it and everyone.
Yes. So what a wonderful shift. I hear, rather than productivity, creativity really generates productivity. And it'd be like all of the stuff in your journal, but then the creativity is what are you going to do with all of that? And what I was hearing is that you have gotten trapped in the trap of excellence is exactly what you described, is that you do something that you're really good at. And then people go, oh, you're so good at this. Can you do more? And you get rewarded for it in all kinds of different ways. You say, oh, you're so good at this, and I have another project for you. And you get some kind of a reward, but the reward comes from outside. It comes from what I call exogenous world, that you get the atta girl. Ooh, we really like it. And, you may even, I've worked with people who've gotten paid a lot for being and staying in their zone of excellence. But the thing about it is that the zone of excellence doesn't give you that heartfelt joy of being doing something that you love to do, where time disappears and you're making a contribution. And so I found that making that shift from the zone of excellence to being primarily in the zone of genius, for me, took some time and took some actual shifts. And I'm wondering if maybe you're in one of those. And that would be how much of my actual priority is my living in my own creativity and letting that generate, the rest of my day. So, for example, making my creativity, even if it was just for 10 minutes, making my creativity first,
Yes.
before I got into the business of the day, was a very efficient shift.
Yes.
That it began to then favor that particular emphasis of opening to, how could I approach this with my genius, and making a commitment to live most of the time, and that's only 51%. Making a commitment to spend most of my time in genius, and then letting that percentage expand in an easy way. So I would say it took me about 2 years to really make that shift. And the other thing was that what it opened up for me was that I really wasn't grounded in my zone of genius. I was really grounded in my zone of excellence. I knew it really well. I could tell you all about it. I could teach other people how to do it. But when people would say, well, what's your genius? I go kind of, so I wasn't committed to it. And so the commitment, even though you're not going to be 100%, the commitment, like jumping fully in, getting in the pool, getting on the field, that's the move. I think that really makes a difference. And then I would recommend that you ask your close friends what they most appreciate about you, because I have found that appreciation is a little signpost to genius, and that other people are going to see your genius before you do, because genius is easy. The zone of excellence has a little bit of grit to it, so it's not as easy. And so you can kind of go, I worked hard on this and I did it well. And people go, yeah, you did it really well. But we don't have that ethic about it was really easy. Well, that couldn't be very worthwhile, because no pain, no gain, et cetera. So actually genuinely appreciating your own genius is something that's a little bit obscured for most people, because we get so rewarded. And also people go, how are you going to make a living doing that? Like, you're going to just play with people in their journals. How are you going to make a living doing that? So Gay, back in the day, what he most loved to do was to sit in his living room and talk to people about the meaning of life.
Wow.
Now, how's he going to make a living out of that? Well, So if you put that first, how am I going to make a living? That stops the flow of genius from really moving into your life. So those are some of the top things that occur to me, as we're first diving into this.
So good and helpful. Yes. Gosh, my head is swirling with all of it. So I'm creative every day, but I think I trick myself into what I call creative, because some of it is actually the functional bullshit, that has a creative spin on it. And I rebel, I'm not a designer, but I find myself, if I'm doing strategy stuff for too long, I'll get on Canva and I start making things. Like it comes out, I can't. So refocusing that in a really bigger, more committed way, beyond a few minutes a day, in a bigger way, I think would be great. And I get like the thing that I think people appreciate about me. And so if you tell me if this is something you appreciate, but is my playfulness. I love to just have fun. And I think I get people to drop their guard, because I am the jester. I'm fun. I'm great with being the fool, and I love having a good time. And when I get out of that place and I take myself too seriously, then everything gets destroyed. And I've had this like series of, okay, if my zone of genius is being playful and creative and I want to bring it to these places, and the response has been crickets. What's been starting to happen is I'm like, oh, well, maybe this is not my zone of genius. That's where I am.
Yes, you're not getting agreement for it out in the world. So what was occurring to me is, did I hear you say something like, I'm not an artist? Is that what you said? I'm not a something.
No, I think I said I'm not afraid to be the fool. But
oh yeah, but back a ways. Back a little ways in our conversation. You said I'm
not a graphic artist.
I'm not a designer.
Okay.
I'm not a designer.
I'm not a designer. So I looked around behind you and I challenged that. So I think that if you apply your playfulness first to you, so that you challenge your own I'm not, because the I'm not is your brain will go, oh, okay, I'm not a designer. Okay, well, you're just going to stop designing. Yeah. So, my sense is through your playfulness, you're designing all the time. And I found for me, when I diminished myself or dismissed myself in any way, that really kind of let all of the air out of my genius balloon, and then I have to kind of begin to, fill it up again with appreciation. So I'm wondering how you might consider yourself, all of those aspects of playfulness. How could you use them first with you?
Yeah. Great question. Yeah.
So what's one thing in your day-to-day that you could approach playfully rather than as an executive or a productivity coach?
Gosh, today I've got not that interesting things happening.
Well, that's a perfect place to start.
I've got a walking meeting at my son's school for the concert that they're doing. So I can show up there with party favors for everybody walking. Little snacks, walking snacks.
You can have walking snacks. There's a couple of other things I'm thinking of. Would you like to hear about them?
Yes, please.
So you could play with different paces, different, like people could be going faster and slowing. They can make little designs as they're walking. They could shift, they could walk behind somebody else and take on their walk.
Yes, you just gave me a great idea. Yes. Okay, so this is fun. My son's school does something called Coachella. The humanities magnet is called Core, and they have a big concert, and it's all of the bands. And for the last few years, my job is to do the food trucks, which I don't know how that's happened, but I hire all the food trucks. And
that's in your zone of excellence. There you go.
Yeah. Okay, but this is the idea you gave me. So we always have traffic control issues, but I have sidewalk chalk that has sparkles. So I'm bringing this chalk, and I think that we can do murals on the ground to show people where they're going, like it's
beautiful,
Wizard of Oz or something.
Oh, beautiful. So that's a great idea. And also we were tossing several ideas, and then one bubbled up and kind of went ding for you. And so that's what I found also. If I let myself just openly create where I'm not thinking about what the result of it might be, then something will emerge from that has that feel of, ooh, that you love to do it.
Yes.
And I think that's the core of being ingenious, is that you love to do it, and time disappears. And then anybody around you is going to be able to osmose that.
I love this. I love this conversation. I actually think that perhaps that part of my zone of genius is the brainstorming thing, because I love to do what you're doing too. I love it so much. I can do it with people all day long. It makes me the happiest. Just pulling ideas out, right?
Yeah, and my sense is it's like getting down into your what Canadians call your tickle trunk, where you have all of these different masks and scarves and things, and you're just rooting in there, and then you find the thing that you want for that one, or
you just say tickle trunk.
They call it a tickle trunk.
That's hilarious.
Where you have props and masks and scarves and things that you can play with. So props also are just a great way to help make the bridge between zone of excellence, because zone of excellence is really caught in the societal, this has a purpose. This is important. We would pay for this. We would, this could add to our bottom line. So it always has a little bit of that linearity about it, but just play. That's why our be, play, love. People go, well, I see the be and the love, but the play, what good is that? You play after you've done your work, but if you play before you do your work, that turning things upside down, I think is really one of the elements that you're really skilled at, that you can move things around and turn them upside down, and you can assist other people to do that.
Yes. I love that. I'm a huge believer in play before work. I think play leads to creativity. Creativity leads to learning, right? And as children, we that's how we learn, by playing. That's how we find the order of everything.
That's funny, because that's where I wanted to ask a couple of questions, hearing you both toss at each other. Where do we lose that? Like, I feel like we had that, most of us have that when we start, and then somehow it gets sucked out of us. Like
School. I think our education system, the one that says color in the lines, and if you don't, then you don't get a good grade, and they berate you for not doing it the way it's laid out.
Right.
What was that about, though? Where did we start fearing children expressing and creativity and coloring outside? Like, how did that happen? That it somehow became, that is how we have to become adults.
I mean, I have a theory.
Well, yeah. What's your theory, Laurie? I have one too, but I'd love to hear yours.
And my theory is that it was probably the Industrial Revolution, right? They were supposed to fit in to be cogs in a wheel machine. So we learn how to do a job. We go to work. We come home. We rinse and repeat. And I think that it was part of conformity in society that sucked the fun out of.
Yeah, and also the spontaneity and the being able to go off the time clock. So I was thinking, back to when we actually started operating with time schedules. Really had to do with trains. When trains started to go here in the States, when trains started to go across the country, they had to have some way of figuring out, when are you going to catch the train? Like for stagecoaches, if the stagecoach was there, you took it. If it wasn't there, you had to wait. So, but when we had trains, then we invented time zones. And I think it all started there. Like, we don't have time for that. Like, come along and sit here and go here, because now it's lunchtime, and now it's class time. So we're not operating by any kind of environmental time. It's really by clock time. And so I think that just gradually, human spontaneity and gatherings and letting something go until it was finished and everybody was ready to, go home, or dancing all night, or, we just, but we don't have time for that.
That's right. Time poverty is real.
Do you think there is an element too of creative people, of scary, like they're loud, they're out of control, we don't know what they're going to do, we never come up with, like, that's a little like, well, let's try to control that a little bit. Yeah, like in children particularly, probably.
Yeah, that particular C word is really, I think, at the base of a lot of people's misery. That someone, like, I can remember being, bursting with things to say, and then my mother basically tried to control me. I think also she didn't want me to. I remember coming home from first grade, and I was all full of something I'd learned, and I was sharing it at dinner time, and she said, "Well, aren't you a little know-it-all?" And it was like, and I think underneath her competition with me and other things was that she didn't want me to be the odd person whom nobody would play with, or, she wanted me to be accepted. I think that's underneath the control, is don't be too weird. Like, one of the other wonderful things she said to me is, boys don't like girls who are too smart. And fortunately, I didn't believe her. And
you found one that does.
I found someone. Yeah, I found a boy who really likes a smart girl. So the whole sense of limiting yourself, I think, comes out of fear, that you're going to be excluded. I think that's at the basis of all of it, is that you won't be able to be part of the tribe. You won't be able to be part of the community, if you're too weird.
That's I can relate so much to that. And as you're sharing, I'm remembering my own experiences of thinking that pirouetting was a perfect way to get to the teacher in kindergarten, and being told you go back and you do it again, you walk up, you walk, and hearing like my dad saying that life is not a 3-ring circus. And the art, I remember actually an art one, and I still have this piece of art. It's this big, and the fairy princess is that big.
Oh,
and the comment from the teacher is very good, but too small. And I was like, that is going to be the title of my memoir.
Very good, but too small. I love it. I love it. Do you
message,
have that?
I still have it. Yeah.
Oh.
Like the message that we get, all the messages, like you were saying. So like, it's just, I bet to a person, we've all heard some of those things that shape the way we think about our creativity and we think about play.
And it's funny because somehow I feel like they won. Like it's really like I work with a good amount of people that are very successful in some ways. They've done the right thing and they've got the job and they make all the money, blah, blah, blah. And there is a deep, you could see there's a misery and an abandonment of a part of themselves that is so. And so in some ways I feel like culture, like I don't know how we rebel it. I don't know how we awaken it back, but it feels like society has been shut down in many ways.
For a very long time. Well, my experience and working with people is that it only takes 10 minutes a day to begin to rekindle having your creativity and your emergence, your discovery be at the center of your life. And it begins to, if you give yourself that 10 minutes, it's kind of like a blueprint for the day. You find little openings and little ways that it keeps expressing itself throughout the day, rather than, if I've done everything else and I've accomplished all of my work and I have some time left at the end, then, I'll go paint or I'll play with collage or I'll write about what I experienced yesterday. Or so the other thing I do is I take a little notebook because I like to write rather than some people, type it into their phones or whatever, but I like to write. And I take a little notebook because you never know when that creative, that little poof is going to come through, and I want to record it because then I can come back to it and use it later. It's kind of like ongoing journaling. When a thought bubble, a creative bubble comes through, if I express it, then I've got it. But if I let it come through and I'll remember that. I never do.
That is crazy how sometimes I have one of those and I'm like, there's no way I'm going to forget this. This is like the most interesting thought I've ever had. And then an hour later, I'm like, what was that thought?
Yeah.
I know. Me too. I'm a journal carrier too. I have little ones. But I was, this weekend, we were in Santa Barbara and in Paso Robles with my husband and my son. We were doing college trips, and we had this dinner, a fancy steak dinner. Took our boy out, and we had the best conversation. And the next day, I was trying to reflect on the details. I thought, in the moment, I'll never forget any of this.
Right.
And I asked my husband, what did we talk about? What made it so great? And he listed 15 things that we had talked about over the course of the weekend, but neither of us could remember the exact thing at that moment at the table.
Yes.
And so for the most part, I will write it down because otherwise it disappears.
Yes. And so some way of recording it, I think, is really valuable because it's letting your genius know that you're in support. Like your whole presence is in support of your genius emerging. And so having some way to record also that's pleasurable for you. So if people say, I've got to write it down. Well, then that's not their medium. They might want to just talk it into record, to record it. Or to share it with somebody else. I find that's another way of anchoring it so that you can remember it. I also think it's a trick of our mind to say, you're going to remember that.
It is. It's
Yeah.
Spaghetti, so make up spaghetti.
Yeah, because it's a way of tricking you to go, and then you just don't remember it at all. So it was like a dream. Like I would keep a dream journal because I would wake up in the middle of the night and go, "Wow, that was an amazing dream," and I would have that thought, "I'm going to remember this," and then the next morning it was nothing. But like, or I'd write down not quite enough, like the green room.
Oh, the green room.
You can look at when you speak of spending 10 minutes focusing on creativity, it kind of had this flavor for me of we need to rebuild a relationship within ourselves with it.
Yes.
It looks kind of like we need to repair. Like when I started playing with mine, I feel like the beginning was a little bit angry inside of me. Like there was a little bit of like, you abandoned me. Like,
where have you been?
I know. So, but it didn't take that long. Like, I feel like it didn't take that long for me to reinvite and rekindle. And so maybe looking at it as a relationship with our younger self is an interesting route.
Oh, I think that could be very useful for looking at your relationship with your younger self, or it doesn't even have to be your younger self. It could be your inner self.
Yeah.
But having a dialogue or a relationship with your inner world, your inner landscape, and then your outer expression of that inner landscape, and to give yourself permission to be angry at yourself about choices, to go through that awkward period, because it doesn't help if you have a really good reason for not doing your 10 minutes.
Mm.
It's not just committing. It's the tool that I've found just absolutely essential is recommitting. So if you forgot your 10 minutes for 2 or 3 days in a row, it doesn't help to beat yourself up and to review all of the other things that you did wrong that add to your being a bad person. The only thing that counts is recommitting.
Mm.
And when you're expressing, you could be mad at yourself. You could express that, in your creativity, but getting accountable to yourself and recommitting. To me, that was really the base that allowed because your creativity, one, isn't going to yell at you, and I found it doesn't repeat. That's why I keep a journal, because the authentic, spontaneous, creative thoughts, they just don't repeat. And so if you don't catch them, didn't catch them.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is serendipity or I don't know what it is, but I just made something called Creative Kindling. And it's a week-long audio series where 10 minutes a day, you reconnect with your creativity.
Well, there you go.
Well, there you go.
I just put it on my website, and it's the thing. You just sign up and it's there. But it's literally called Creative Kindling.
Well, beautiful. So you know exactly what to do here.
Yeah. Yes. I know what to do. I do know what to do. I need to think what you had said earlier about being playful towards myself in my approach, I think is probably the biggest missing ingredient. I've gotten so serious with how I need to make this work that that's a massive shift.
Well, it sounds like, first of all, it would be a lot more fun for you.
Yes, I need more fun. Yes.
And if you're expressing and you're exuding fun, you're going to get a different response to people with whom you want to share, a creative approach to life.
Yes.
But if you're a serious creative, there's a much smaller market for that. The philosophers and, the people who are, creating a new ontology of, the root word of creativity and where that came from and why we don't do it anymore, that kind of thing.
Yeah, no thanks. I will leave that to someone else. It's not my mantle.
Years ago, I was invited by a friend of mine who she wanted help for her website, and she wanted to teach creativity. And I remember sitting with her, and I remember experiencing this really bizarre thing inside of me that was basically, well, you'll take your own class, right? Like you will, because there was there was zero creativity in the way she was going about teaching creativity.
Oh,
Right. Right.
It's like, when those who don't do,
Yes.
it's a good reminder.
Yeah, definitely. And one question I like to ask people when they get serious and they seem stuck is, what did you love to do when you were 5?
Yes. That's a great question. And also, what did you love to do? That there are 2 criteria for me: that time disappears and that I get more energized
Yes. Yes.
by doing it than I did before I started. So those are 2 keys that really let me know I'm in, I'm in the flow,
Yes.
into the creative flow, and also being able to slip out of the creative flow and find it again. Because a lot of us, I think, are scared to get into it because we're afraid it's not going to last, or I don't really have a reservoir of it, and so I'm going to run out. But as we're committing and recommitting, it really allows that really endless reservoir inside us to express itself more freely.
Yes. So true. It's so true. And I think if we can just trick people into starting,
Right.
hardest part, give it 10 minutes or 5 minutes to start. And then the most difficult piece is behind you.
Well, one of the things that was just occurring to me as you were saying that is music. That's a bridge that I've used. Like, what's a piece of music that when you hear it, and it could be anything, but when you hear that, you feel freed up. And then the music can give a little bit of a structure, so it's not just you and your thoughts. So that kind of a bridge then allows, again, the time to disappear and you to enter into a different kind of relationship with yourself.
Yeah,
and it's funny because too, when you start moving or you listen to music and your body, the second you said that, your body started to like wave a little.
Exactly.
I feel like that's also probably a component is your body is engaged when you're creative so much more.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Instead of just, I'm writing something and the rest of me is not doing anything. So the moment that we begin to move, even if it's a little bit of movement, that also allows the gates to open.
That's right. And I think we offload some of the stuff that we're holding on to if we let it, if we really let ourselves move.
Well, one of the things I found too, when in working with people, is even the most intense experiences we have. Like, there's some things that really cannot be, understood or processed or resolved, but we can turn them into creative expression. Mm-hmm. And so, when someone is really in a funk, or they've had some big loss, that also can be turned into creativity, with movement and opening breath and just letting a little bit of expression happen. And then that gets us back into flow again, because most everything, hardly anything ever finally gets resolved. It's That's just right. Moving and reshaping.
I just realized something really profound. A friend of mine, a young friend, I met her recently actually, was diagnosed with a really fast, very aggressive cancer and is probably going to pass soon. And I was communicating with her brother this weekend because he picked up her phone while she's not conscious at this moment. And he was really sharing moments of like, this is heavy. Like, I'm not even allowed to feel that bad. And he was really, processing his own journey. They're twins, so he's watching.
Oh my goodness! So yeah, it's very powerful for him. Cool.
But I there was a moment in the weekend that we were exchanging a lot. Like, I felt like he was probably, they've lost their parents a few months ago. I mean, like, really not an easy story. But I sent him a picture of something I was doing that was very creative, because I kind of wanted to explain why I didn't respond to him for a few hours. And so I sent him this like concrete thing I'm making. I'm making a new concrete thing, by the way, which I'm really excited about. And so I sent him the process. I sent him a picture of me pouring the concrete and then sending the thing and then doing the thing. And I felt like there was a shift. Like, he started sending me pictures of her when she ran a marathon, and somehow it's like it felt like it unstuck the energy a little. I mean, it's still a difficult situation. This is not denying, the pain of what's happening, but there was something about it that felt like flow. It was like it was stuck before. Stuck it, and I didn't realize, but that's what it was. Like, I infused the heaviness of the conversation with a little bit of
beautiful
of flow.
Yeah, and I was just thinking, how radical to play with death.
Yeah.
But even in the dying process, playing, because that's basically what's going on. Is something happening, we respond to it, and and if you let yourself be spontaneous too in any kind of a situation that's supposed to be a certain way, whether it's at work or somebody's dying or like, shh, this is very serious, and if we can shift that, then the actual creative spirit of the universe can really move through you.
Wow.
We think in pictures before we ever put words to anything, and that's how our brains were formed. And so to go back before words and share images and things like that is a way of communicating that we often disregard because we're such all thinkers and we want to put the right words and say the right things, especially in a situation where someone's passing or grieving. And I love what you did. I think what a beautiful opening that you created to share an experience in a way that's visceral and meaningful, but you don't have to wrap it up in a bow, with the right language.
And it was unexpected because you're right. Like I could see, like he was like, oh, the nurse is telling me that I need to prepare and that she's had a good life and I want to punch her in the face, and I was like, yeah, that's,
right.
There's no, like, you're entitled to whatever you're feeling right now.
Right.
But but it is also difficult because they're in their 20s, like they're really young. I mean, there's something about the situation that's really quite difficult, but somehow I just, to be creative when it's kind of not what's expected is creativity, right? It's like,
yes.
it's the very thing is like to not respond the way that you should be responding. That's the very essence of creativity, I think.
Yes. So and what scientists call pattern interrupt.
Yeah.
And so I think also an element of expressing our genius is to interrupt those patterns. The moment we recognize, I learned this from somebody, like some way I'm supposed to be, like standing in a line. Yeah. I learned that. So I've when I've been in lines, I've gone up and down the line saying hi to people, and so interrupting a pattern for yourself, even like brushing your teeth with your other hand. And when you interrupt those things, you're really cracking open, the structures that we've learned to keep ourselves, under control.
Yes. This made me think of is, I'm sure this has happened to both of you. Have you ever been at a play where it's just so boring or, you're just kind of anesthetized by the lines and somebody misses a line or trips or does something and all of a sudden everyone's paying full attention.
Yes.
Like the liveness is back. The spark is back. And it's not because they did what was planned. It's because they didn't.
Yes. The thing that has the aliveness in it, that element of discovery and surprise, I think is something we can generate in ourselves over and over again, just simply by recognizing, oh, I'm repeating the same old, like speaking in the same tone of voice, or, always having to have the vegetables first, or, any kind of pattern that makes liveliness diminish is something we can challenge and have fun doing it as well.
And there's an element of courage, which interestingly, I was thinking in France is courage is a kind of a different, it is the same word, but it's cœur, which is heart, and age, which is agir, which is act. So it's really putting your heart in motion is really what courage, because thank you for responding like that. As I was responding to him, I could tell that it was risky. There was an act of courage to not follow the regular, right, he's going to be fine, she's going to be in the arms of whatever, whatever people were staying around him. It took like I was risking something, by sharing more creatively. So as we're wrapping up, I'd love to hear both of you some thoughts around like, how do we invite this? Like, how do we, I don't know, speak words of encouragement, maybe for people that the risk is worth the squeeze or whatever that expression is, that it really is worth taking the risk to do something outside the lines.
What was just occurring to me, I was feeling myself hugging my inner self and saying, I'm with you. I'll be with you. This, it might be awkward, or you might not quite know what to do, but I'm with you. We can do this. That sense of not abandoning ourselves, because I think that's at the heart of our losing our creativity. When someone says, God, what is that you've just drawn? That just looks stupid. Or, and we go, ugh, that it attacks our being. And so when we don't abandon ourselves, but we be with ourselves in that, that was what was occurring to me.
Oh, that hug. I wish you people, I don't know, if you're listening, make sure you watch this YouTube video, because this really such an embodied moment. The way you hugged yourself was really beautiful.
And what's interesting too, all the way over here in Los Angeles, my arms are lower, but I was doing the same thing.
Beautiful. So, that also expresses for me, if I am truly loving and being with myself, it's going to ripple. And it may not ripple in ways that I recognize right away, but I guarantee you it ripples, and that, other people experience that more of an opening to their own genius.
I have something to add to the query around courage that came up, and it was just to dare to say the thing or express the thing. Like, I think especially as women, we're so socialized to be nice and do what's expected. And before doing that, like, to check in and see if there's a possible pattern interrupt that goes more to the heart than just saying what's expected.
Yeah, beautiful. The other thing that just occurred to me is learning how to let my heart support my head, rather than having my head out there, doing and going. And if I literally let my heart come forward and support my head.
Oh, I love that so much.
Yeah, then
we all put our hands on our heart.
Yes, that's all. Yes, and then I can tickle my head and give me noogies and.
That's really beautiful. Thank you for this moment. Thank you for this conversation, both of you.